Morning all, and how the devil are you? Now, I thought it was about time to have an early impressions review of the Ducati Streetfighter 848. Basically, it's a corking bike. There is very, very little wrong with this bike, in my opinion. Fair enough, I've only done a few hundred miles, and I've only owned it a little while, but everything's spot on. Absolutely spot on. It's got everything I want. It's got speed, it's got power, it's got manoeuvrability, it's got everything, without actually being a little bit too crazy. Now the 1098 Streetfighter, I think that thing is just a little too crazy. But with this bike, everything's been dialed down just a little bit. The engine's not as punchy, it's not as raw. It won't try and rip you out the saddle. Even the brakes have been dialed down a little bit, so they're not as full on, if you like. Now that's something I don't quite agree with. I'd rather have some really hard braking equipment down there, but I can understand where they're coming from. So let's get into it. First thing, I suppose, getting on the bike and comfort. Well, getting on the bike, obviously you sling your leg over, but with the back end being quite high, it is actually quite a long reach. Until you get used to it and blah blah blah. Maybe I'm just getting old. It could be that. Can't lift my leg up quite as far as I used to. But once you're on board, looking at this bike from side on, you'd think it would, the sitting position would actually be a little bit uncomfortable, too far forward, what have you. But once you're actually on the bike, it does fling you right forward, but it's perfectly balanced. There's very, very little weight and pressure on your shoulders or your wrists. It's just a really nice place to be. They've got it perfect. Your feet aren't too far back. And the crazy thing is, I've heard a lot of people say that the first thing you should do with the fighter is change the seat. Why? Everybody says it's uncomfortable. I don't think it is. I think it's really comfortable, and there's masses of room on here. You can slide the backside around. The one thing I found with the fighter is, if you want to pull on some speed in the tight and twisties, I tend to slide forward to the tank, grip the tank with my legs, and then once you're on the straights and you want to relax, you just slide your backside back. There's a good 6 to 8 inches of movement here. And once you find your position, it's perfect. It's just so comfortable. Now the dash. The dash is good, the dash is clear. It's easy to read. You toggle through your settings with this switch here. Gives you your trip, your time, temperature, and then back to your total miles travelled. You got your speed on there and you got your revs. Everything's dead clear. You got the lights displayed above, which gives you indicators, your neutral light, engine, petrol, what have you. The one problem I have with this is, even though everything's nice and clear, seeing the thing, it's a bit of a problem, because the seating position on the bike, with having it straight forward, basically looking directly down the fork legs, so you have to keep your head up. So, and you can't really just tilt your eyes down to see the dash. You actually have to move your head a little bit, which is a little bit of a gripe for me, but maybe that's just something I've got to get used to. But apart from that, the dash is fine, the dash is great. visibility around, these wing mirrors are fantastic. They're ugly as old sin, but they really, really work well. The shape, the size, everything is perfect. You can see masses behind you. Now, I'm actually going to change those, just because I like the aesthetics to be the way I want them to be. But anyway, the mirrors work absolutely fine. Now, one thing with this bike, with it being quite small, very agile and light, is it's susceptible to movement, especially in wind. Now, we've got quite a heavy wind at the minute, and as you can see, there's trees either side here which are protecting a little bit, but once those trees disappear and you've got a clear view either side and you get a crosswind, the bike can move around one hell of a lot. Now, you get used to that and you compensate for it pretty quickly, but it can catch you by surprise. Another thing with the bike being light is the front end tends to move around quite a bit, even on straights like this. I mean, we're only doing 55 miles an hour here. If the bike was up to 70, 80, the front end feels like it's jumping around. Now, that could be a suspension issue, but I've set up the suspension for myself and I've pretty much got it spot on. And one thing with Ducatis, our suspension's really, really stiff. Doesn't matter what Ducati you've got, the suspension's stiff. Suspension on this bike is almost maxed out for the softness. But that's just something you got to live with. Tire pressure is spot on, so I'm not sure where it is. Maybe it's just a bike characteristic, maybe it's just because it's so light. Another thing, the bike is so narrow, you can really get a hold of it with your thighs and your legs. You don't feel like your knees are sticking right out into the atmosphere, which is also great when you come to a stop, because your legs can go straight down without having to stick out over, because the bike's so wide like a lot of bikes are. So it gives you maximum stretch on your legs, which is good when you've got short legs like me. Now, I can't really tell you much about performance at the moment, because obviously the bike is still running in. But what I can say is, I've only been riding this bike for 2.5 miles, and already I can feel the difference in the smoothness of the engine. So once this thing is run in, I can imagine it's going to be super, super smooth to drive. Gear change is nice and clean, no problem there. You feel it when it kicks into gear, which I actually like, because you know you made a good change. Brakes are nice and smooth. They're hard, but they're not aggressive. I have to admit, I do like a hard brake, a hard full-on brake. You tap the thing, you stop dead, basically. It's what I like, but these aren't like that. These are very, very progressive. Clutch. The clutch is actually really stiff. It's fine when you're just tootling around, but if you're stuck in traffic and you've got to do a lot of clutch work, that thing's going to do your hand in. Now, I haven't used this bike for commuting yet, but I do actually plan to. And from everything I've seen from the bike so far, I can't think it'll be anything other than perfect for that, other than perhaps being stuck in traffic with that clutch. But she's comfortable, she's got power where she needs it, manoeuvrable. It's going to be a perfect commuter, I think. Now, slow speeds on this thing are an issue. I mean, obviously this thing's actually built to go fast, so that's sort of fair enough, but the slowest I've managed out of this bike is 12 miles an hour before it starts spitting, stuttering and jumping around. Now maybe that just means, or rather maybe that's an issue that'll debate after the run-in period, I don't know. But again, I would imagine commuting in traffic around city streets when you need to go slower, that could be an issue. The exhaust note. This thing's got a funny old sound. I can't say I don't like it, but I can't say I like it. It's sort of rattly. I don't know, you probably won't be able to hear that, but lower down in the revs, when you're running nice and even, it sort of rattles. When you pick it up, it gives you a good bark. It's not too loud. I mean, the standard pipes on this thing at the minute, she will eventually be getting termies, but for the minute the standards are fine, absolutely fine. The engine tone is good, it's not too loud, but you can hear what the bike's doing, which I like. I much prefer to change gears depending on what the engine note's telling us, rather than having to look at the rev counter all the time. Turning circle. It is pretty crap, which you'd pretty much expect, I suppose. Fuel economy isn't too bad. I haven't done any real testing where that's concerned, to be honest, but from what I understand, you get about 50 miles to the gallon. And you do actually get a warning light for reserve, which kicks in. And a very handy thing on the dash is it gives you a count in miles from the time the light comes on. I'm not exactly sure how many miles the bike will do on reserve. As far as I understand, it's around about 30 miles. But it's quite handy to have that countdown for you, so you can't really go wrong. Now, I actually live around about 10 miles away from the nearest power station, so that is actually of a concern to myself. Tyres. Diablo Corsas, pretty sticky stuff, and I've never had a slip yet. I haven't really pushed it, to be fair, because I'm still babying the engine, and I want to get fully used to the thing before I start thinking I'm Evel Knievel on this thing. But so far, not a problem. I haven't ridden in bad weather. I haven't ridden in rain yet. I'll be honest, I'm not a rain rider. I don't enjoy the stuff. I don't enjoy riding in it, so I won't go out in it, but I do from time to time get caught once out. But that hasn't been the case with this bike yet, so I can't actually report on that. If I was going to compare the Streetfighter with any other bike, not that I've ridden every bike going, but the one bike I could compare it with is the early Triumph Speed Triple 1050. I had two of those things. I absolutely loved them. And this thing's quite comparable. Now, power wise, I think the Speed Triple it'd probably top the Ducati. But for fun wise, manoeuvrability and downright hooliganism, they're pretty much on a par. The one difference is the Speed Triple was a bit of an unshaven lout, if you like, where the Ducati's a little bit more refined. Yeah, I think riding the Triumph Speed Triple, you feel a bit gruff and unwashed, whereas when you're riding this thing, you feel very, very suave. But overall impressions, honestly, absolutely brilliant. I love this thing. It's a cracking bike. So much fun. You genuinely can't help riding this thing without a smile. And it can't surprise you. Even before it's run in, this thing surprised me a couple of times. It's so easy to use the power and not even think about it. I've ridden a few bikes that are easy to ride fast, but there's very few bikes out there that are very hard to ride slow, and this is one of them. She just wants to go all the time, and she's very comfortable while she's doing it. It's definitely a biker's bike.